What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Frankie D'Astoli Show. I am your host, Frankie D'Astoli. As always, super excited to have you guys here. Appreciate everybody jumping on. Appreciate everybody listening. We're doing a little bit of a late night recording session tonight. Not getting in the studio till about 8 o'clock, which is rare. Usually doing morning sessions, maybe early afternoon. But today was just one of those days where just couldn't kind of find the time to fit it in. But very excited to be here. Very excited for this show. We're going to talk about what it takes to break into real estate investing, really understanding the pros and cons, the risks versus the rewards, and putting yourself in a position to succeed and to successfully break into the space. And it's going to also be a great show for anybody that's already in, that is maybe looking to take their portfolio and their journey to the next level, or potentially even pivot into a different strategy. But we definitely have a few topics to go over before we get into the whole, nuts and bolts of it. Today was one of those days where I'm just reflecting, and I'm just very thankful. I'm very blessed. I'm recording this on December 19th. And today, the Rich Dad Real Estate Show dropped that I was featured on. And it had a great title about building a portfolio with, not much money in the savings, which is exactly the journey that it was for me. And it was a really awesome feeling. And this morning, I wake up around 5 a.m. I went to the bathroom. I put my contacts in. I brushed my teeth. And I went back in my room. I do about an hour of prayer, or I do my best at least to do an hour of prayer before I get my day started, before I go to the gym, before I, get into all my meetings and all my calls. And I go back into my bedroom to start my prayer session. And my wife is up looking at the phone, and she's holding it up to me. And she goes, "The show's on. The Rich Dad Show is on. The one that you're on has launched." And she was even more excited than I was about it. And it just goes to show that really having a supportive wife is one of the, or a supportive spouse in any case, right, is one of the greatest gifts that you could have in this world. And that's definitely something that we're going to talk about today. But it's been awesome. I really appreciate everybody's love and support. That was a really amazing moment for me. And I'll talk on that just a little bit. So I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I think it was back in 2020 was the first time that I read it. I think it was kind of like we were just getting into the whole like COVID times. We were kind of locked up, as most of you guys know, as I talked about in the first episode, Frat Starter Father. I came from medical device sales. I had a really great job. I had a really great boss. I had a really great life in a lot of those cases, but I just wasn't feeling that full fulfillment. And I picked up Robert Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, which if anybody hasn't read it, I'm telling you right now, the book isn't even so much of a real estate book. It's a mindset book. It just really, in such a simplistic and easy to digest way, it just maps out, the way that wealthy people operate and run their lives to become wealthy. And as I was reading that book, a lot of just the wheels just started turning, and there was so much that changed in my life from there. I determined that I wanted to get into real estate investing. I determined that I'm currently sacrificing time for money, where I need to sacrifice time for education, right? I need to get educated on how to get into real estate, on how to buy assets so that those assets produce wealth for me, produce cash flow for me, so that I won't no longer be, wasting, or not wasting, but spending my time in exchange for money. I'll be making money, and I have the tools that I need to live life on my terms. And that's really what Rich Dad Poor Dad did for me for the first time that I read it. And after that, I ended up reading it again back in the beginning of 2024. And it once again sparked another flame inside me that allowed me to, leave my corporate job and start building this, portfolio that my partner and I have started building, allowed me to open up D'Astoli's Dojo, Rosary and real estate, all of these other amazing things that I'm a part of, that I'm really blessed to be a part of. So it was pretty awesome. This all came about, and one thing that I will say, and I will continue to say, guys, is real estate is a relationship business. It should really almost in a sense be called relationship estate, because all of your transactions typically are going to come from some sort of relationship. And that's not always just like asset transactions, like transactions in, just relationships as a whole, with people that you're talking with, things that you accomplish, things that you get done. And I had a student of mine in D'Astoli's Dojo who, she jumped on. She was one of my first students, and she's awesome. I love having her on. And she was connected with the Rich Dad, kind of whole background. And she had dropped my name to them, and they had reached out to me and asked if I wanted to be on the show. And I just remember the feeling of getting that email and just like absolutely losing my mind. I was like, this is so surreal. And it really was, like I said it in the show, it was like pretty much like my Rocky Balboa moment, because, I'm in my Jersey area, like I'm decently well known, but like if you look on my Instagram, like I have less than 700 followers. Like I'm not that big, right? Like so I'm not like out here with 100,000 followers like some of these guys are that are on the show. So it was really awesome. And a fun fact is, like I have this show, it's my podcast, but I've only ever co-hosted on one other show, or not co-hosted, guest. I was a host, not a host, a guest on one other show aside from the Rich Dad Show. So that was really only my second time that I was ever a guest on a show, which is pretty funny for it to be the Rich Dad Show. But it was an amazing experience. Jaron Sustar is a great dude. He's got so much knowledge. It was great to chat it up with him for a period of time, and to have it posted and just to see it is really, really awesome. So if you guys haven't listened to it, I'm going to drop it in the show notes, and I hope that you guys do, and I hope that you really gain some value from it, and I definitely hope that you gain some value from this and from this episode today. And I've gotten a lot of people that have reached out to me on Instagram, and they said that they were really inspired by my story, and I just want to say from the bottom of my heart that means a lot. And looking back on it, it is it's awesome to see. I like the fact that it is inspiring, and when I look back on it, I feel very good about everything that's happened. But it's a moment of reflection, because in those moments I never knew that this would be an inspiring story, right? That's not how it like is played out, right? That's not how I think about it. It's in those moments, it's moments of decision, and there's so many things that tempt you to go one way or tempt you to go the other. And you just got to keep the faith and continue to push forward and make those calls. And in hindsight, everything always plays out, right? And that's just when I recap my life like that, it's very much what it looks like. Like I just look back and I say, oh yeah, like that was awesome, like what it was. But it didn't feel like it feels now then, right? There was a ton of other emotions. There was doubt, there was fear, there was worry, there was anxiety. And you have to just continue to push through that. You have to continue to keep your vision in the forefront and keep your faith as close to you as you possibly can, and continue to push forward. So the fact that a lot of people have reached out to me and said it's inspiring, I really appreciate that. And I just want to say, like, I'm not anything special. Like anybody and everybody could do anything that I've done, just as I reach and strive to do things that other people have done. It's all about just your mindset. It's about putting yourself in the right positions, and properly preparing. And like I always revert it to, guys, it's about faith. And like that's really, really what I put my stock in. I believe that every decision that I make, as long as I bring it to God, it's blessed, and it is the path that I'm supposed to go on, and I surrender it to Him. So that's really, there's no secret sauce to it. But again, I'll put the show in the show notes. It was an absolute blessing. I loved it. My wife and daughter and I went out to grab some ice cream today to celebrate, because I'm a sucker for ice cream. So it was really fun. And talking about inspiring, so we got the holiday season coming up, right? We got Christmas right around the corner. If you guys are looking for any gifts to give to anybody, if you're watching on the video, I'm holding up this book here. It's Daily Lessons from the Saints. It's 52 weeks of inspiration and encouragement from the saints. This book is awesome. I remember I bought this, I think it was back in 2020 or 2021. I bought a copy for myself and my girlfriend at the time, now wife, Christina. And for 52 weeks together, every night, she had a copy of her book, I had a copy of my book, and we read about the saints. And it's really, really awesome. There's some phenomenal saints they talk about in there. St. Francis of Assisi, St. Patrick, St. Catherine of Siena. There's so many. I mean, 52 weeks of them. So you have a lot of saints in there. And you want to talk about inspiring stories. I mean, they really have, they take the cake, right? So I'll add this to the show notes too. If you guys are looking for a great, Merry Christmas present, if you got a secret Santa or that special somebody, or even for yourself, if you're trying to buy something for yourself, I always revert to books. This one, Daily Lessons from the Saints, it's 52 weeks of encouragement and inspiration. You cannot go wrong. So that is my little Catholic tidbit. And I will say one other thing too. My wife and I went to confession over the weekend. It was amazing. It felt so good to walk out of there and to feel very refreshed. And one thing that, after I had made confession, one thing that the father was talking with myself was, just spending 3 minutes every day to do an examine of conscience, right? And you take those 3 minutes and you pretty much just say these 3 questions for each minute, right? Minute 1 is, what went well today? Like, where did I succeed, right? Did I, do everything that I wanted to do, right? And this is great for faith purposes. It's also great for business, right? Like, it's just a recap of your day. Where did I go? Where did I go right? What did I do well? Where did I fall short? And what could I do to be better? right? And just each minute go through those things. First minute, what did I do well? Second minute, where did I fall short? Third minute, what could I do better? And you just continue just every single night. I've kind of added that into my routine since this weekend, and it's been really great. It's good kind of just it puts a period on the day. It allows you to kind of examine, understand where you had some promises, where some things went really well, where some things maybe you didn't do so good, and how we could be better tomorrow. So those are my two little Catholic tidbits for today. Get the book. It's a great gift for people, and start doing some examining of consciousness. I think you guys are gonna find some fruit from there. So today's show, as I mentioned, it's going to be what it takes to start buying real estate and to break into this space, right? And the first portion of everything I'm going to talk about is going to be very knowledge based, right? It's going to be very much geared towards preparation, where the second half is going to be geared towards more so execution, right? So if you are someone who literally you don't have any real estate, you might just kind of be thinking about this. Maybe you're in a very similar situation I was about 4 years ago, where you're like, man, I'm in a job that like I don't really know if I don't like it, but I also know that like I don't really want to just be someone who just puts money in their 401k and then waits 40 years to stop working so that I could retire. And I think I want to maybe get into some real estate, and you're kind of maybe not sure where to go. Or maybe you've kind of been somebody that's been reading, you've been listening to podcasts, you're kind of gearing up. You might be in that a little bit of analysis paralysis where you're kind of just you're a little hesitant. I'm going to try to do my best to give you the steps on what you need to do next to execute. And if you are someone who already has a portfolio, I don't want you to turn away, or if you're already experienced investor, I want you to kind of maybe just use this as a refresher. And there might be some things that you grab from this that might allow you to adjust your vision, readjust your game plan in a sense, and maybe make some more money, maybe do some different decisions, and make some better investment opportunities come your way. So the first thing that I want everybody to do is I want you to start really understanding your strategy. Right. So when you think about real estate, right, it's actually not like, just a one size fits all thing. There's a lot of different strategies within real estate itself. Right. So let's go through a few. One common one is flipping houses, right? So flipping houses is you buy the house, you fix it up, you relist it, you sell it to an end buyer, and then you're totally out of the deal, right? So that's very more of I wouldn't necessarily call it a short term, but some people will call it's more so like the fat check, right? Like you buy the house, you renovate it, you sell it at top profit as you can, and you take all the profit and the proceeds for yourself, and then you move on, right? And you're not, after that, you're no longer married to the house. So that's one strategy. The opposite, maybe a little more towards the other end of the spectrum, is more of like a buy and hold strategy, right? So there's a few different tiers in buy and hold within itself, but buy and hold is pretty much you buy the house and you're going to hold on to it for at least the longer term, maybe not, the full 30 years of the note or whatever it is, the mortgage, but you're going to at least hold the property. You're going to get a tenant in there. You're going to rent it out. You're going to become a landlord, right? For some period of time. You're more so marrying the deal a little bit longer. That's another side of the spectrum. There's other strategies like wholesaling real estate, which is where you never actually even take ownership of the property. You pretty much are in the paper transaction business where you'll get properties under contract and you'll sell the rights of those contracts to investors and you'll make a profit in the process, right? So you're never actually even owning or operating real estate. Then you have other stuff such as like short-term rentals, right? Airbnb, for instance, where you might buy some properties in maybe some really cool vacation areas and you do some short-term rentals. You have more tenant turnover, but you're getting some really good profits in certain areas. And that's a whole nother strategy within itself. And then you have even other things like laundromats and self-storage and, motels and hotels and apartment syndication. So there's such a wide, array of opportunity within real estate. And the first thing you need to do is really understand your strategy. And I'm not saying that you need to be totally married to that, right? For instance, like I do a lot of buy and hold. I do a strategy that's called BRRRR, where we buy the houses, we renovate them, we rent them out, we refinance them, and then we repeat the process. That's the last R. But really, I also still do wholesaling. And if a really great flip came around, we would be flipping the house, right? Or if a laundromat opportunity came around, we'd probably get into laundry. So it doesn't have to be I'm only going to flip houses and that's it. But you want to have something that you mainly specialize in. That way, when you're looking at deals, you know what you're going to focus on, right? So first things first, you got to do that. And the best way to understand this is number one, you want to research it. What do I mean by research it? I mean, start reading books on it. right? Start listening to podcasts on it, right? For instance, like we were talking about house hacking a couple episodes. I gave you guys a great book on house hacking, the house hacking strategy book. That's a book you'll want to read if you want to get into house hacking, right? There's a great book by David Green. It's on Burr, right? That's a good book to read if you're going to start burring deals. Jay Scott has a phenomenal book on flipping houses. So like all these books that are out there for you guys on those particular topics, you want to get those books, you want to read those books, you want to listen to podcasts, you want to do as much preliminary research as you can on our end, on your end. The second end of that is talk to people that are doing it. And this is so big, guys. Talk to people that are doing it. Get out to networking events. Get on Facebook groups, start connecting with people over social media, see who's doing it, and understand what they like about it and what they don't like about it. Why do they like those things? Why don't they like those things? Do these things that they don't like and they do like seem like things that I will like or I won't like, right? That's a really big part of it, and that's a big piece of the puzzle also. So understand, who's doing those things, what are their feelings towards them, and do I feel like I would jive and have those same types of feelings? So make sure you're doing your research on your strategy, what you really plan on specializing in. The next thing you want to also ask yourself is like, where do you stand currently, right? So some strategies require some things, some other strategies don't really require anything, right? So I'll give you an example. Wholesaling real estate, which is like really what the basis of my foundation came from, which was wholesaling real estate. You don't need reserves, right? You don't need cash to do it because you never actually acquire the property. You don't need credit because again, you never actually acquire the property, right? So that's a real estate strategy where you don't need to have a lot of money in reserves. You don't need to have, a 660 plus or 700 plus, credit FICO score. You don't need to have really a ton of experience. It's good to have experience, but when I first started, I had no experience in real estate, right? And I was still able to, bag some deals. So like that's one end of the spectrum. Whereas like if you go into like, apartments, right? You're going to need to have, for the most part, a lot of reserves, or you're going to have capital partners that are able to put money up front at the table. You're going to have a good credit score. You're going to have good experience, right? Similar with if you're going to flip a house, a lot of times if you're using any type of short-term financing, most of the time it's called hard money lenders. They're going to want to see certain things, right? And some of these guidelines, vary with lenders, but they might want to see a 660 plus credit score, and they might want to see, let's just say, $20,000 in reserves for, purchasing the property, stuff like that. Whereas you're just going to need to kind of take an inventory list of where do I currently stand, right? How much cash do I have on hand? What's my credit score, and what's really my experience in this field, right? And experience could come in a bunch of different forms. Do you have project management experience, right? Have you been around a construction job site? Do you have any type of construction background? Do you have property management experience, right? Have you ever been a landlord or worked with a landlord or worked in a property management facility or something along those lines, right? Do you have any sales experience? That was my background, right? I came from medical device sales when I first jumped into real estate. Do you have any types of sales experience? Sales is such a critical piece, and I'll continue to hammer on this, but I think getting property at a discount, being able to be that person that goes out and achieves those types of deals is the difference between people that really make a lot of money. But, what are you bringing to the table? And, that's something that you want to know before you jump into this, right? That's a really big piece. So understanding your strategy, doing your research on that through books, through podcasts, through all of that other stuff, and then really understanding, taking mental stock of where you currently are, right? And listen, you might say to yourself, I want to buy a house right now, but I have a 550 credit score and I have $5,000 in reserves. I don't really have much. What I want you guys to understand, and this comes straight from Robert Kiyosaki's Rich Dad Poor Dad, you need to stop saying you can't do it, and you need to start saying, how can I do it, right? There's been a handful of properties, guys, that I have had absolutely no reason to buy, right? I had no money in reserves, right? We didn't have the ability to purchase them, but there's a way to be creative and there's a way to get those deals done. The same rules apply for when you're trying to break into real estate, from when you're trying to do anything, right? So if you don't have those things, I want you to shift your mindset to how can I get those things, not I can't get those things, right? And we're going to talk about that as this goes on a little bit more. But the next phase, so once you have done that, you need to understand the risks versus the rewards. And this is kind of a mesh between some pros and cons also. So I'm going to break these two lists down. Let's talk about some risks about real estate, right? And I personally, I think the pros and the benefits and the rewards significantly outweigh the risks, but there are some risks. There are some maybe cons, you could call them. The first and most probably prominent one is real estate is illiquid. And what that means is it's different from a stock in the sense of like if you go buy a stock tonight, right? You could go and you could sell that stock tomorrow and you could get your cash back out. And you might have made some money off of it. You might have lost some money off of it. You might not have even done anything. You might have broken even, but you could pull that money out almost instantaneously, right? With real estate, you can't do that. When you buy a property, you're usually married to that property for at least a short period of time, if not a long period, right? If you have a property that you purchase and you're going to flip it, you're going to have to most likely do some renovations to that place. It's going to take some time. You're going to have to relist that home. It's going to take at least a few months before you could actually cash out of that property and pull your money back out, right? So there's again, there's pros and cons to all this stuff. This is considered a con in some cases, and I'll give you guys a quick example. My partner and I, we have 5 refinances, 5 cash out refinances that are going through. Now, a refinance, from simplistic terms, pretty much means we have currently some short-term debt on the property, about 6-month to 12-month term debt, and we are changing out those loans for longer period loans, for 30-year fixed interest rate mortgages, right? And those 30-year fixed mortgage rates are going to replace our short-term debt, right? That's just kind of like a refinance. I know I'm getting a little bit granular. But with a cash out refinance, what it actually allows us to do is it allows us to tap into the equity that we built in the house. The equity is the difference between what the house is worth and how much debt is on it. So for instance, if the house is worth $150,000 and we have $100,000 worth of debt, we have $50,000 in equity. So by doing a cash out refinance, we could tap into that equity and we could take some of that out when we refinance those loans, and we could put that money into our pocket, and that's tax-free money because it is part of the value of the house, right? It's not necessarily a capital gain. It's part of the value of the house that we're pulling out. So my partner and I have 5 refinances that are supposed to go through. And in total, we're looking to pull out about $30,000, maybe close to $40,000 in total on these houses. And this has been going on for about 3 weeks now. We're trying to pull this money out. And we've had a few hiccups with just some loans and stuff like that and getting some appraisals transferred. But long story short is, it's not like a stock where we could press a button and boom, we're pulling the $30,000 out, right? We need to wait. We need to get approved through underwriting. We need to get approved by other people. We need to bring it through title. There's a bunch of these kind of hoops that you have to jump through in order to access that capital. So that's one thing, right? Real estate tends to be illiquid. The second is it's really important, especially when you're just getting started. And I think in perpetuity it is, but it's important to have reserves, right? So again, you put $100 in, you buy a stock, right? And I'm going to relate a lot of this to stocks. You buy $100 worth of stock. If you lose all of that money, guess what? You've only lost $100, right? It's not like your Robinhood account is going to reach into your pocket and pull another $50 out, right? It doesn't work like that. So if you put $100 in stock and the stock totally tanks, you lose $100. In real estate, let's say you buy a house for $100,000 and you're expecting to put $30,000 worth of work into it, and all of a sudden you start ripping down these walls and you realize all of the plumbing and all of the electric is outdated and it's old and it needs to be replaced, and now it's another $15,000. You need to have those reserves, right? Or I'll give you even more real life examples from us, right? We had a situation where, we had a tenant that was moved in and she was living there for a few months or whatever. And she calls us and she says, hey, it's cold out. I'm turning the heat on and the heat's not working. So what do? We send our guy out there. Turns out we need a whole new furnace, right? So that's money that we need to have in reserves. And especially when you're just getting started, and even so, we're not just getting started. These things happen. These things are always going to continue to happen. But when you're just getting started, you tend a lot of times to underestimate repairs, to underestimate how tenants will treat properties, to underestimate how much money it actually costs sometimes, right? So it's really important to have reserves. And again, the difference between stocks and real estate, I'll use an example. A stock, app isn't going to reach in there and take money out of your pocket. Real estate could force you to have to bring some more money up so that you could get your asset back to stabilization, right? So you really want to make sure you have reserves. Number 3 on this that I have is you really need to know how to manage people. And I think this right here, the lack of management is the ultimate driver for problems for real estate investors, right? And there's so many people out there say like real estate could be completely passive, and you're absolutely right. In certain scenarios it can be. But usually when you are the person that's buying the house and you're managing the project, you're managing the tenants, you're doing all of that stuff, you are the manager. And just as managers in any industry, right, whether it's at your local Walgreens or it's at, a Fortune 500 company, if you have a manager that isn't doing their job, the employees will suffer, the business will suffer. And at the end of the day, you are the manager of your asset. That's how it's looked at, right? And you might be saying, well, I have a property manager, I have a general contractor, I have all these other people on the team, and that's awesome. But you still need to manage those people. Because if you don't manage those people and they're not doing their job properly, your asset, your bottom line, your cash flow, your profit, that's all going to suffer. So you need to know how to manage, or you at least need to be brushing up on those skills on how to manage, right? And those are some of the people you're going to have to manage. You're going to have to manage contractors, especially if you're doing renovations, obviously, right? But even if you have handyman, you're going to have to manage them going out to properties, getting things fixed. You're going to have to manage tenants. You're going to have to manage your lenders even, right? Lenders have so much going on, right? They have a bunch of other loans. As much as we all want to believe my loan is the most important, my loans, they're dealing with mine, they're prioritizing mine. That's not the case, right? You're going to have to manage them. You're going to have to stay on top of them. You're going to have to make sure that, they're asking you for everything and you're getting everything in. You're going to have to manage your real estate agents also, right? Same thing. This is all a business where people are constantly transacting with other people. And even though we want to believe that our situation is the most important, that's not always the case, right? So you got to manage your team. And real estate is truly a team sport. Like I said, it should be called relationship estate. So manage. That's a huge part of it. And again, that's some part of the risk and, maybe a con in some cases if people don't necessarily have that inherited skill or at least have developed it. So those are some of the more risks, right? So I want everybody to be aware of that, whether you plan on breaking into real estate or you plan on continuing to grow within it. So let's talk about the rewards right now, my favorite part. The first one I'm going to talk about is called leverage. Leverage. This is the difference, and in my opinion, one of the best differences about real estate versus like stocks. Again, I'm just using this as an example. With a stock, if I want to buy $100 worth of a stock, I need to pay $100 for it. With real estate, if I want to buy a $100,000 property, I do not need to pay $100,000 for that property. I could go out and I could utilize leverage, which means I could get somebody else to pay $80,000 of that property, $90,000 of that property, $100,000 of that property, right? I might not even need to pay a dime for it. And in a lot of cases, that's been a great scenario that I've run into a lot, and everybody can. It's possible for anybody to not pay a dime for any type of real estate. But that leverage where I could have my name on a property worth $100,000 and I could be in it for as little as $0, if not $10,000, $20,000, is something that you cannot do in a bunch of, if not all of the other asset classes that you could buy in, right? So that is one of the best reasons that I love real estate, right? It allows me to buy a lot, have great valuation on my property, and I don't need to pay the full amount for what it's worth. The second is called cash flow, right? So I want you guys to imagine like a scale, like a judgment scale, right? Usually investors, they base their investment product off of two types of things that are on the scale. On one side is called cash flow, which means every single month cash is coming into my pocket, right? Most of the time this is through buy and hold property, right? It's usually going to be I have a tenant in there that's paying on my mortgage and I make some money on top of that. So if my mortgage is $1,000 and the rent is $1,400, I make $400 every single month off that property, right? That's the cash flow. On the other side is called appreciation. And appreciation could come in two forms. But what appreciation is it's the increase in the value of the home over time, right? So the common one is like over a year, a house might increase like 3%, but in some areas it can increase 10%, it can increase 15%. In other areas it could be lower, right? It could only increase 1%, or in some cases it might go down in some cases. Again, it's very, very rare, but I'm sure in some cases, in some areas that's out there. But appreciation can be done in two ways. It could be natural, right? Which is just year over year, inflation goes up, price of things go up, price of houses go up. That's all positive. It increases the value of the home. Or it could be forced. And forced is done through renovations, right? So you might buy a house for $100,000. You might put $50,000 into it, and it might be worth, $220 on the back end, right? So now you forced that appreciation by doing those renovations. So cash flow is a reward of real estate. It puts money in your pocket every month. Appreciation is also a reward in real estate. It increases the value. And when the value increases, it increases what's called the equity, which we talked about, right? That's the difference between what the house is worth and what the debt is on the home, right? So if your debt is still at 100,000 and because you're paying it down, it's going down and down and down. So let's just say your debt's at 98,000 and your home value is now at 150,000. Boom, you have $52,000 in equity on that property, right? So those are two of the biggest drivers and biggest rewards of real estate. Another reward is tax benefits, right? So one of the biggest tax benefits is called depreciation, which is kind of the opposite of appreciation, right? Appreciation, your house value is going up. Depreciation is actually a real estate kind of magic card. I would probably, the best way to probably put it, where even though you're making money on your property and your property is increasing in value, you actually get to depreciate the home because I don't know all the logistics. I'm not an accountant by any means, but pretty much what you're saying is the value of my physical house is going down because of the material that's inside it, because of, all the appliances inside, because of everything that's in it physically. The building itself is now older. So because of that, it's not as in pristine condition, even though you might have totally renovated this house and it's worth a lot more, right? So that's one of the other benefits is the tax benefit of it. And then a few other ones. Generational wealth builder, right? This is a big one of why I love real estate. You could hold a house for 30 years. You could have a tenant pay that mortgage off. You're building equity into the home. And then in 30 years, you have a totally free and clear house that's putting money in your pocket that you could then again leverage, right? I could utilize the money that's built into there. I could pull it to buy more houses. I could pull it and, send my kids off to college with it. Whatever you want to do at that point, it develops that generational wealth. And it also fast tracks you to what's called FIRE, which is financial independence through real estate. The more properties that you buy, the more cash flow that's coming in, the more flips that you do, the more that you have money coming in, all of this other stuff, right? I think truly, and again, I'm a little biased, I understand. I think it's the best asset class to get into if you want to build generational wealth, if you want to find financial freedom. Again, just my opinion, take it for what it is, do your own research, talk to people, of course. So a few other things I want to just talk about in the knowledge aspect is now that you've established your, strategy, and now that you know kind of the risks and the rewards, the pros and cons, one question that I want you to ask yourself is, should you partner up, right? And I'll make a whole nother video about partnership because I have a partner in our portfolio, as I talk about all the time. If you see him, you probably, he's behind the camera most of the time on my Instagram posts. His name's Steve. He's my partner. We ride or die with all of our stuff. And I love having a partner. I think it's awesome, right? But sometimes you need to ask yourself, like, does it, fit your long-term vision? And if you are going to partner up, in my opinion, the two things you want to look for is, number one, do you guys both have the same vision for your future? Right. And I'll put a quick example, right? If I wanted to, buy, let's say 50 houses and my plan was just to hold them for 5 years and then sell off the portfolio and go move to Morocco and, just live my life out there. But my partner wanted to hold all of his properties for at least 30 years so that he could cash them out in 30 years. And that's when he plans on retiring and then he wants to bounce. Our long-term visions are not lining up, right? So that's a very, very early sign that we're probably going to, in a few years, have some friction, right? So you want to make sure if you're going to partner up with somebody that your long-term visions line up. The second thing is, like we talked about in the beginning, when you took kind of stock of where you are and what you have, try to find somebody that kind of complements you, right? So if you guys are both really good at sales and you both have, really good credit, but you don't have a lot of cash, that might not necessarily make for the best partnership. Now, I'm not saying it's not a good idea for you guys to partner up, but you might still not be getting, you might not necessarily have that one piece that you need to really get into the next level. Whereas, like, let's just say you have really good project management experience, you might have some construction background, but you don't really have a lot of cash, but you have good credit. And then you go out and you find somebody that's in sales that, maybe doesn't have the best credit, but has a lot of cash sitting and they want to get into real estate also. Now you have kind of a good mesh between two people that have a little bit of different backgrounds, but kind of complement each other and could push forward and get to the next level, right? So that's something that you want to think on with partnership. Again, when you get in a partnership, guys, it's really a marriage. It's a relationship, right? You're dating, you're engaged, you're married very, very quickly once you buy a property, especially. So make sure that if you're going to do it, you're serious about it and you guys are on the same page, because you typically hear a lot of stories about it not working out. So, but in my opinion, It's been one of the best things for me. My partner Steve and I, we really enjoy working with each other. We have the same long-term vision and we really mesh well. So it's awesome. The second one on partnerships I want to talk about is in life, right? So I talk about it a lot. My wife, she is my, support system. She's always backing me. She's always doing that. It's really, really important, guys, that you have a good support system. And some of you guys might be saying here, I don't really have it. And that's okay. But what I will say is it's out there. And most of the time, if you don't have it necessarily, maybe in your nuclear, you maybe, have parents that just don't get it. They don't understand why you would want to leave such a great job to jump into real estate and, go be a landlord who fixed toilets. Or you maybe, don't have that relationship in your life with a spouse or, someone that you're dating or someone where you can't really necessarily have that person to bounce off of. But what I will say is if you go to a meetup, guys, and you meet other people in real estate, that's your support group. So that's who you want to find. You want to seek out other people that are doing it, that have done it. And I promise you're going to find people that support your vision just as you support theirs. And it's a really, really great community. That's one thing I love about the real estate community. It's really, really supportive. So go out and find those types of partnerships before you get started. And those are going to be people to lean on. And the last thing I'll say on that too is one other thing you might want to get on the knowledge side is the mentorship. Right? The mentorship piece is so, so key. If you have a good mentor, those are people that you could find that's done it, right? You could go to them with any questions that you have. It's really, really great. It's a great thing to utilize. I have two real estate mentors, Rob Fink and Marcus Gates. I'll give them a quick shout out. They are the two guys. If I jump into any real estate problems, they are on speed dial for me. They're always the people that I'm calling. So mentors are really, really awesome. And there's usually two ways to get involved. You could pay to play or you could seek to serve, right? So pay to play is, similar things like you could go and you could sign up for a course. Like personally, I offer pay to play mentorships within D'Astoli's Dojo, right? If somebody's looking for a mentorship, I give them my time in exchange for obviously, money in that sense. And we make sure that I do everything I can to help you achieve your goals. But a lot of times there's the seek to serve aspect as well, right? And that's how I've been a part of a lot of mentorships with Rob, with Marcus, with people from my past. Is I'll go in there and I'll pretty much just say, hey, what can I do to help your business thrive? And in return, if I could just learn from you, that's what I want, right? And that's exactly how it goes. And every single time that I've done the seek to serve method, it's always paid out and benefited me. So both ways are great. You're going to get a lot of value, but one thing I will emphasize is go out and get a mentor, guys. Like I really cannot emphasize that enough. Cool. So that is the knowledge aspect, right? Once you have all of that stuff in place, you are now ready to kind of get into the execution part of it, right? So we're going to talk about a few different topics. The first thing I'm going to talk about is generating leads. And I'm going to make a whole nother episode on generating leads. And also, if you guys go to D'Astoli's Dojo, rei.com, you could sign up for my free class, which is how to acquire your next real estate investment deal for less than $200. I'm literally going to show you guys how to acquire real estate deals for $0 out of pocket. And I'm going to show you how to do it with, if you wanted to spend, let's just call it even $200 just to get a little bit creative and put a little more effort into it, right? But that's one thing I want you guys to do. Go to D'Astoli's Dojo, rei.com, sign up for my free class. It's on January 2nd. It's going to be over Zoom at 7 p.m. Eastern time. So definitely jump in there. I'll help you guys generate some leads and show you guys how to do that. But if you were going to get started, there's a few different ways that you could generate leads. There's two different types of kind of atmospheres for this, I'll call it, right? The first one is on market and the second one is off market. It's very, very simple to distinguish. On market means that it's listed by a real estate agent and it's public, right? You could go out, you could go on Zillow, you can go on Redfin, you can go on the MLS and you could find these deals. And right now, what I will suggest to everybody, whether you are a experienced real estate investor or you're not, go out and just download those apps, right? Download Redfin, download Zillow. If you are a licensed agent and you have access to the MLS, that's the gold standard. That's phenomenal, right? You have great tool at your disposal there. But having these apps and seeing what's on market is great because there are still deals on market. Out of the 15 houses that my partner and I bought over the past 8 months, about 6 of them or 7 of them were on market. So almost about 50% of our deals we purchased on market. And I don't think we've ever paid full ask for them, right? And we've done some creative finance stuff. But for the most part, having said that, is there are deals that are still on the market. And even if there isn't, what you learn by looking at on-market deals is you learn trends in your market, which is super, super important to being successful. So there's on-market, and then the opposite of that is off-market, which basically just means the deal is not listed, right? This is with the seller that hasn't listed their home. They haven't necessarily gone through a real estate agent to try to sell their home. So it's an off-market deal. Now, I'm not going to get too in the weeds on like the lead gen formats right now, but there's something called organic versus paid, right? So organic means that you really don't spend much money on it, right? So I'll give you guys a few examples. Driving for dollars. Driving for dollars is when you get in your car, you drive around a neighborhood that maybe you're looking to purchase in, and you find properties that look like they fit your buy box, and you write those addresses down, and then you go and you skip trace those leads. Skip tracing means you go and find out who owns those properties, and then you call them. That is an example of organic lead generation, right? Another example of organic lead generation is called joint ventures, right? Joint ventures is where you partner up with somebody that has a deal, right? And you go and you do something with that deal, right? You might partner up with them to flip the property. You might partner up with them to wholesale the property. Again, totally organic. You don't spend a dime. Those are a few examples of organic lead generation. Paid lead generation could be another form, which is like if you wanted to go and spend, a couple $1,000s on a direct mail campaign. Let's just say you wanted to target a single family house in, I'm going to use Birmingham, Alabama, for instance, right? And you said, I want to go find a buy and hold in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm going to spend $2,000 on direct mail. I'm going to target absentee owners. So I'm going to target landlords that have had the property for at least 15 years. And I'm going to send direct mail out to them. And I'm going to wait for my phone to ring. And I'm going to answer those phone calls and see if they're interested in selling. That's an example of paid. Another example of paid is if you want to do like a mass text campaign through a website like, Launch Control or Lead Sherpa. That's another example of paid. So again, that's the next piece, right, on the execution is how am I going to go find my leads? And if you're someone who doesn't really want to spend any money, there's so many great ways to do that, guys. Go sign up for that free class. I'm going to talk all about that on January 2nd. The next piece is going to be financing, right? So let's say you get a deal under contract. Awesome. Where are you getting your money? How are you getting that financing, right? How much will you be putting down? How much do you have to put down, right? Are you going to be putting money down, right? What kind of loan are you going to be using? Are you going to be using a hard money loan? A hard money loan is a short-term loan, usually anywhere between 6 months to 12-month term, high interest rates. At this point right now, we're getting about like 12% interest rates. And then you're also going to be paying some points on the front end, right? Points pretty much means if the loan's $100,000 and the lender is charging you 2 points, you're going to pay $2,000 just for the loan origination, right? So again, some detailed stuff. I'll make another video on loans. But where are you getting money? How are you going to finance the deal? All of that stuff. And again, this is stuff that you want to listen on. You want to listen to podcasts on. You want to read on. You want to talk to people. This is really, really important because the financing piece is extremely critical. And it's a huge part of the process. Start talking with brokers, start talking with lenders. Don't wait until you have a deal to do this, guys. Go out and go start talking to them as soon as possible so you understand their terms, you understand how these things work. Another part of that, and not in the financing degree, but is contractors, right? Start getting to know contractors ahead of time. Don't wait until you have the deal under contract. You want to know contractors. You want to know who you're going to send into these houses once you get them under contract so that you could start putting together a scope of work and that you have people that you trust and you can rely on and you have at least a good feeling about that are going to do the work before you get into that, right? And a great place to find them, meetups. I'm going to say that so many times, right? Meetups. That's really it, guys. Like go to your meetups in your area. If your area doesn't have a real estate investment meetup, start one yourself. Go on your Facebook pages, right? I'll just use like Georgia, flips houses or Georgia off market or Georgia real estate, whatever it is, and just post, hey guys, my name's Frankie D'Astoli. I've been looking for a meetup over here. I got nothing going on. I'm going to be hosting one at this local bar. If anybody is into real estate and wants to come and chat it up for an hour, like meet me at 6:00 on Thursday, right? Stuff like that. Like get out there, but find those contractors, find those lenders, find those agents ahead of time. So that way you are prepared and you have good lead flow coming and you know how to execute on it once you have it. The next piece I want to talk about a little bit is legal, right? And I am not an attorney. I'm the furthest thing from it. So don't take this as legal advice. But if you are buying a property for the first time, right, you're going to want to determine, am I buying this in an LLC, right? Am I buying in my name? Personally, again, a recommendation. I recommend buying it in the LLC, obviously. But you could talk with your attorney about that. But it's really, really great to have an attorney that's going to, take a phone call from you. And again, they might charge you hourly, so you'll want to get to the point. But it's really, really good. Little things like that, spending $400 on an attorney sometimes can save you tens of thousands of dollars in the future. So I would recommend before you buy that first house, make sure you have that legal aspect set up, talk to people in the real estate industry and see how they're operating with their stuff. And that's really like the basis that I'm going to get into on this episode, just on the execution. I plan on in episodes further, guys, breaking this down even more. But when we talk about execution, what I really want to talk about, guys, is you have to carve out time. And I have a lot of people that reach out to me and they're like, hey, like, I want to get into real estate. I want to get into real estate. Like, I'm ready to go. I see what you're doing. Like, it's awesome. Like, that's the stuff I want to do. And a lot of people that hit me up, I respect them. I love them. They're great people, but they don't have any real knowledge or experience. And this is one thing that I really will emphasize, guys. When I talk about carve out time, I mean, you need to carve out time to read, to listen to podcasts, to go to networking events, to immerse yourself in the real estate space, right? That is so, so big, because if you're not doing that stuff, you're going to run into problems when you get into this, and it's not going to be what you think that it is. I promise you that, right? So if you're somebody that's sitting there, you're like, listen, I just don't have the time. Like, I work a really demanding job. I'm working 60, 70-hour work weeks. I don't have the time. I have a family too. I don't have the time to read, to listen to podcasts, do all that stuff. I get it. Like, these things happen. Then it doesn't mean you can't get into real estate. It just might mean that you might want to take a little bit more of a passive approach, where if you have the cash, you're working a good job, you have the demanding job, whatever it is, you have the cash, you might want to come in as like a passive investor, right? And I have a bunch of passive investors that I work with, friends of mine that I work with, that they want to be in real estate, but they don't have the connections that I have because of X, Y, and Z reasons. They don't live in the area that I buy in, but they want to be a part of the deal, right? So they'll send, they'll be part of the funding process when we go get deals and stuff like that. And that's all a possibility. But regardless, if you want to be in it, and you want to buy it, and you want to be boots on the ground, and you want to be running it, carve out the time to study, to research, to learn, to go to events, to do all of those things, right? The next thing is you have to stay disciplined. You have to stay disciplined. This is super big, right? And I talk about this a lot in some other cases as well. But if you plan, if you're saying, I want to buy a house in the next 90 days, you need to stay disciplined on your lead generation, right? And this is the biggest thing. I teach a lot of wholesalers, and a lot of them say, man, I did a direct mail campaign and nothing came from it. Cool. Well, tell me about the direct mail campaign. How long did you run it? 1 month. Yeah, nothing's going to come from 1 month, guys. What you need to understand with lead gen, a lot of it's about timing, right? And if you're going to commit, you need to stay disciplined. If you're going to run that direct mail campaign, you need to run it for at least 4 months. Like, that's how it's going to go. If you're going to do texts every month, you need to send out at least 10,000 texts every month, right? If you're going to go driving for dollars, guess what? You're staying disciplined. You need to go driving for dollars before work and after work, and you need to get those addresses down. You need to be calling them. If you're going to cold call, you need to say, all right, how many calls am I doing every single day? If I'm doing every single day. I have a student of mine in the dojo. His name's Eddie. He's a great guy. I brought him into D&D. He's doing some work for me there too. He does 25 calls a day. That's not a lot. After work, when he gets home, he does 25 calls a day. And guess what? Since he's been there, he's done like 5 deals, because he does 25 calls a day, spending no money on marketing, right? No money on leads. So disciplined is super, super important about that, right? Get around people that are doing it. That's the next one, as we talked about a lot on this episode already. Go to these events, meetups, and talk to people that are doing it and see what they're doing, and get involved with those people that are doing the things that you want to do. Like, there's that, well-known saying of like, the 5 people that you hang around is like the average of what you're going to be, right? Get around those people that are doing what you want to do, and you're going to just naturally, kind of morph into what they are and what they do. And the last thing I'm going to say on this is create a plan. Right? Create a plan. I don't remember that saying, but it's like, a goal without a timeline is a fantasy, or something along those lines. But I am such a big sucker for like 30, 60, 90-day plans. I love planning things out in quarters. I think it's just phenomenal, and breaking these things down, knowing, all right, every single 30 days, like, what should I have accomplished? How am I breaking that down by weeks? And then breaking that stuff down daily into tasks. I'm really, really big on that stuff. And I really feel like when you create a plan and you write it on paper and you have it printed out, and you have testimonials that you could say when you're starting that plan and where you plan to be at the end of that plan, again, that builds into that vision, and it allows you to have trackable goals, right? And again, I talk about this when I was in karate. One of the best things I learned from karate is how to track my growth through ranks, right? I went from a white belt to a yellow belt to an orange belt, all the way up to black belt, to 3rd degree black belt. And it all is the same exact process. And when you're in real estate, guys, a lot of that is very similar. You buy a single family house. A lot of investors they'll have a portfolio of houses, and they'll move up to apartments, and they all say the same thing. They say it's the same exact process. It's just, some different paperwork and a few different procedures and stuff like that, but it's all the same. It's all trackable. It's all these tasks that get accomplished that you reach those goals. So create that plan. I'll make another video on 30, 60, 90-day plans shortly in the future, but make sure you have a plan. You know how you're going to execute. So that in summary, guys, is how to get into real estate investing, or how to continue on your journey and to continue to grow, right? So make sure you know your strategy, your main strategy. It doesn't have to be your only, but know your strategy, know the risks and rewards, take stock of where you currently are, what you have to bring to the table, determine if you want to enter into partnerships or you want to kind of ride a little bit more solo. Make sure you go out and you find mentors. That's a huge piece. I'm telling you, you're going to save thousands of dollars. My two mentors have easily saved me tens of thousands of dollars from their advice. And then from there, you need to execute. Make sure you're generating leads. Make sure you're staying disciplined. Make sure you're getting your financing in order, getting your contractors in order. Don't wait until you have a deal under contract to start doing these things. Get out there and start doing it now. And I promise you, it's going to reap rewards. So I really appreciate you guys. Again, go to D'Astoli's Dojo, rei.com, sign up for that free class. It's coming out on January 2nd, 7 p.m. Eastern time. We're going to talk about how to acquire your next deal for less than $200. I'm literally going to show you how to do it for $0. I'm going to give you a ton of strategies, and we're going to have a plan on how to execute on those strategies. So it's going to be really, really awesome. But as I always say, guys, pray the rosary. Pray the rosary every single day, and make sure you're buying real estate, right? Generate everything that you can to have financial freedom and to have faith freedom as well. So it's been a pleasure. Thanks for joining the Frankie D'Astoli Show, and we're out. Peace.